I'm Cianna Wyshnytsky, pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am a project manager with the Bureau of Reclamation in the Columbia Pacific Northwest Regional Office in Boise, Idaho. And I've been in this role for just about a year now. Last year was the 1 year work anniversary. I'm going to say that this starts in maybe seventh grade, where we watched a film about this volcanologist couple who like went around the world and poked lava, with sticks and stuff. And I was like, people can do that? That's a job. And so I kind of had the seed implanted of geology without knowing that geology was a word. Then I went to my undergraduate education at Amherst College in Massachusetts. I thought I would go into that searching for kind of pre-med type courses, and then quickly realized that I liked being outside more than I liked being inside or in a hospital or medical setting, and learned that geology is science, but oftentimes outside. And so I rapidly switched over to a geology major, ended up writing a senior honors thesis with some fieldwork in Colorado, and knew that I liked that research aspect quite a bit, which then led me over to a Master's of Science at Utah State University in geology. And that project focused on glacial sequences in the Olympic Mountains in Washington and the Southern Alps of New Zealand. During that time, I had no idea what types of jobs existed for people with interests like mine. So, not necessarily kind of the hard rock mining and gas type of industries that geology is typically associated with. So I just decided I would go to school even more. Again, I really enjoyed the independent research aspect and kind of independent driven learning. And that brought me to Queen Mary University of London in England for a PhD, where I studied glacial geomorphology in the Alps in a couple different field sites in both Austria and in Switzerland. Again, towards the end of that degree, I still didn't have much guidance on what careers were available. I was kind of the right person, right place, right time for a position in the federal government with an agency called the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and that is under the US Department of Agriculture. I was able to get a geologist position with them, and that brought me back to Utah, which was wonderful. I spent about, I think, 5.5 years maybe there, at which point I felt like I kind of outgrew the position a bit and was looking for other opportunities and was applying to a myriad of opportunities still in the federal government, looking at not only earth science and geology based roles, but also kind of more natural resource management type roles as well. And I ended up applying for plenty of positions, had some interviews, didn't have applications read in some situations, and eventually interviewed for another job that I didn't know existed, which was this project manager. Turns out there's an entire industry behind project management and tons of research about how to do it well. So I applied for this position in project management with the Bureau of Reclamation, and shortly thereafter was offered the position. So if we're looking at earth sciences specifically, you can't negate the fact that you need to have a basic educational requirement that shows that you understand earth sciences, geology, environmental sciences, which is great. I fully support that. However, I think something to emphasize in terms of professional growth and personal growth, and to emphasize when interviewing, are some of these kind of more transferable and sometimes softer skills. Something I gained a lot of during my master's and my PhD was independent research and independent education. So knowing how to learn something or knowing how to seek out the resources necessary to develop a research project, do that research, learn a new skill, learn a new discipline. And I think being able to show that personally driven aspect is quite important, and that can carry you a long way through, I'm assuming, most careers. And that's something I never really thought of in terms of emphasizing as skills. I always thought more of like, but look at all this coursework I've done and this specific paper I've written, which is important. But again, there's more that you can get than just kind of the degree or the qualifications. Along with that, I think something very important is learning how to ask questions and who to ask questions to, knowing how to seek out the information that you need, the resources that you need, admitting that you can't know everything and do everything on your own. And kind of being comfortable asking questions, knowing how to ask the right questions, knowing how to find the right people or the right resources, I think is really critical, especially in some of these more kind of project management or leadership based roles. A lot of it is working with a larger team, learning teamwork skills, learning delegation skills, learning interpersonal communication skills to kind of come to the final product. Those are all really important things that I didn't think about much until the past couple of years when I realized just how much of like overall school and education and academic background plays into a physical workplace and interacting with other people. The concept of project management, or the official title of project manager, seems to be really prevalent throughout kind of the general business and workplace world. But having come from the academic realm, I had never known that that was even a title or a concept. And so there are vast quantities of research behind what project management means. There are different certifications people can gain, such as the PMP, the Project Management Professional. Um, all of that goes to say is if we think of a project team, the project manager is the one who's kind of making sure that day to day, week to week, project to project, everybody on that team is accomplishing their individual or collective goals. Everything is staying on schedule, maybe building that schedule, maybe building and plan for how this project will actually get accomplished. Working on selecting the right people for the right types of projects. So reviewing the resources available and how to kind of partition them accordingly. Um, a lot of it is honestly scheduling and taking notes, which are critical. And that kind of frees up some of the subject matter experts to not have to worry about that part of the project if they have kind of this one person taking care of everything. So yeah, a lot of it is just kind of pushing projects forward from start to finish, making sure everything stays organized, everybody stays on task, and you have the correct resources, funding, time available to accomplish that project. Our agency has so many different types of projects, everything from like constructing a brand new hydropower dam to repaving a parking lot to stream restoration in terms of salmon habitat improvement. So project management can be anything and everything. And I'm fortunate that my supervisors recognize my background and my skill sets and have used those in terms of what type of projects I've been assigned. My projects encompass salmon habitat improvement projects in both Idaho and in Oregon. And then I have a potential new hydropower development project and a potential groundwater recharge project. And so you may be able to see how all of those kind of play into a geomorphology / earth science type background, which is why I've been assigned those. Regarding the fieldwork question specifically, I really enjoy these salmon habitat improvement projects. They do allow me to get out in the field. So I basically have a team of engineers who are internals to our agency who are developing the designs. And then we have external sponsors or partners who are part of these projects as well. And one of the critical components is looking at the engineering design on the computer or on the printout, and then taking it out into the field and discussing with the entire project team how what is on the paper translates to what we're physically seeing on the ground. Does that make sense? Does it look like it's going to work? Is there something we didn't notice before in the field that now we see when we have all our eyes on it? So field visits are absolutely critical, and I try to bring myself to those as much as possible. So oftentimes with the federal government, you will start at what's called a lower GS level, and GS is the general schedule. It's essentially how the different pay grades within the government work. Coming out of an undergraduate degree or even working during the summer in an internship style position with a federal agency, you would be towards the lower end of that GS scale, which is a great place to get started. And oftentimes those roles are the technician type roles. So that could be something like working on a trail crew for the Forest Service or the National Park Service, or working as a plant and soil technician for something like the Bureau of Land Management, potentially working as a geologist in training type position for some of the agencies like the Forest Service or the Natural Resources Conservation Service. If anybody is more inclined towards engineering. There are plenty of environmental engineers, civil engineers, even electrical engineers who also start at some of those lower GS levels and more of that technician type role where you are the person on the ground, either doing the work or collecting the data that then goes to someone else who's kind of putting it all together. So that's a great place to start. And once you're kind of in the federal system, it's easier to climb up through that system and increase your GS levels, either with experience or further education or outside employment. For anybody thinking about working for the federal government, my biggest advice is today, right now, go on usajobs.gov, set up a profile, and set up some search alerts. You can set it for daily alerts for positions, weekly, and then just if anything new comes up. And you can search for specific keywords. So let's say geologist, you can search for any geologist title that comes up. You can search by GS level. You can search if they're open to the public or only open to federal employees, many parameters. And I would say just start kind of poking around on that and getting some search alerts sent so that you're aware of the types of positions that are being advertised. And when you click on those positions, they have a pretty good list of what types of requirements there are in order to be accepted for that position, whether that's academic coursework specifically, or if you need X amount of years of experience, any other special requirements that may exist. So it's a good idea to have a handle on kind of what a geologist needs to have in terms of coursework versus what a hydrologist may need versus a civil engineer, and know that you're kind of building your coursework towards that if that's what you're looking for. The resume that you will submit is unlike most private industry or other types of position resumes, in that they want to know absolutely everything and anything about any positions you've held, any coursework that you've done, the schools that you've been to, volunteering, anything. I believe that my resume is maybe 17 pages at this point, which is insane. It's absolutely insane. But you need to be able to kind of match the exact requirements of the position with keywords in your resume, very, very clearly spell out absolutely everything that you did in each position. I would say if you are applying for federal positions, don't get discouraged if you don't hear back for a long time, or if you never hear back about applications, or if you're just not getting much traction to start with. It does take a while to kind of break through the system. And even in the case of me feeling like I know what I'm doing when submitting resumes, there are some that I'll just never hear back about. It happens, it's fine. If you are consistently not hearing back or being not passed along to the hiring managers, give your resume a review, get some other eyes on it, ask for some assistance, see if you can clean things up a bit. I think some of my advice for current students would also be just keep your options open. If you do accept a position or an internship, it doesn't mean you're tied down to kind of that position or that line of work forever. Move around, find something that fits. Your work doesn't have to be your passion, and your passion doesn't have to be your work. But if you can find a way to make that happen, then like, awesome. And you're allowed to keep finding ways to try to make that happen. So you may take a job just because it's a job and you need some sort of position and some kind of income and something to be working on, which is fine, but you're always allowed to try new things and move on, or even take kind of radical trajectories away from, your current work or your educational background. That's great.
Thank you so much for joining me, Cianna. You were my inaugural actual outside visitor in the face-to-face class last year, and ultimately the inspiration to start recording this video series. So I'm glad you are willing to come back